Hello everybody, welcome back. We're going to be doing another recipe, mixing it in my ZBX HM7 mixer, which I've had since July 2024. I think I got it at the start of July. I think it was around the 3rd of 2024. So I've had it, 7-8 months now. So it's a bit of a catch up on how the mixer is going. I've had some people requests for more videos on it just to see if it's still performing, if it's still functioning, which it's working just as good as the day I got it. And I have to say I'm absolutely loving using it every week. Sometimes I use it multiple times in a week, but once a week on the weekend pizza nights, it's definitely the mainstay of creating some of those beautiful dough recipes. And trial and error, trying something different every time, see what works, what doesn't, what you prefer. So today what we're doing is, these are the ingredients, or the main ingredients we're going to be using anyway. So it's a little bit different to what you saw in my first mixing video, where I mixed two different pre-ferments, the Polish and the bigger. Today is a direct method, so it's basically the whole mixture of flours going into the mixer, and we're going to bulk ferment it overnight. So it's going to be just over 24-hour bulk fermentation. Then we're going to be making the balls and then letting them rise, and then we'll cook them and see what comes of it. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing 3 flours. So we've got the Molini Pizzotti flour, the Costa d'Amalfi, which you saw last time, and this time we're using the Pulcinella as well. And I'll explain the 2 flours if you don't know them already. And then we've got the Caputo Tipo Uno. The reason why I like using the Tipo Uno is it's kind of like a whole grain flour, so it gives it a little bit more flavor to the dough. That's what I personally think. So to give you a bit of a comparison for the flours, the Costa d'Amalfi is around the W3320 rating. So I would say it's probably the equivalent to a Caputo red, which is the Cuoco flour, whereas the Pulcinella is more around, I think it's around, I could be wrong, I think it's W260, 270, which is the equivalent to the Caputo Blue. Whereas these guys have obviously flipped the colors around. So it's a lesser strength. So what the mix that I've created here is we've got it's 1 kilo total. So we've got 300 grams of the Costa d'Amalfi, then we've got 600 grams of the Pulcinella, and then 100 grams of the Caputo Tipo Uno. Now, because we're doing a bulk fermentation, the reason why I've mixed in the 300 grams of the Costa d'Amalfi, I'll zoom it up so you can see the names a little bit, is because it's got a higher protein content. It helps with the bulk fermentation going for quite a while. This one here is really only rated, I think, for about a 12-hour fermentation, so just to push it a little bit longer so it doesn't overproof, and it just bulk ferments steadily for a little bit longer. I've mixed that in there as well, so that way when we do ball it up, we're not getting overproofed dough balls. We're only going to use 1 gram of fresh yeast, so that way it ensures that it's a slow fermentation. And I like to use 30 grams of salt, so it's just fine, just normal sea salt. So so that's essentially the recipe. So what we'll do is, once we mix it, which we'll look at it in the mixer, then what we'll do is I'll show you the different stages while it bulk ferments, so you can see the progress and whether it's doing what we're expecting it. Now, the one thing also, the reason why I'm going also with 300 grams of the Costa de Amalfi being the higher protein content flour, so it's ideal for long fermentation, is also because typically your bulk fermentations are more often than not low hydration doughs, but I'm going to do this one at 70% hydration, just as an experiment, just to see. I've normally done like bulk fermentations with lower hydrations. I just want to see what happens when we go to 70. The previous one that I did, or the first video where I've used this mixer, you saw the 80% because I was really testing the performance of the mixer. We don't really need to do that. You can see that in that video if you need to see it. But what we'll do is let's move to the mixer and let's see it perform and mix. And you can see that it's working just as good as the day I got it, pretty much. I do clean it all the time, so you can see in the actual bowl itself, it's just as new as the day I got it, even though I use it every week. But if you do that with your mixer and you clean it and you keep it covered, it's just gonna look new. And I think it's, you know, if anything's gonna corrode on it, I mean, this is all stainless steel, so it's not gonna corrode, but even the body, which isn't stainless steel, if you keep it clean and because you got salt going in all the time, and it does splash, yeah, you're going to minimize anything, whether it's the paint coming off or anything like that. But I have to say that the paint's pretty solid. So it's still, yeah, it still looks as good as the day I got it. Actually, what I'll do is I'll move it around one sec so you can see the controls. Oops, sorry. So there's your controls there. So that's your power button. You saw it last time. So when you press it, it glows blue. And then if you close your net, that's your dial, which controls all your variable speeds. So what we'll do is let's throw some flour in there. Sorry, excuse the bumping. I've just got to set it up. There you go. So you can see what's happening in the bowl. Just got to get the right angle. Make sure that, hopefully that's good enough. All right, let's go. So that's all the flour in there. So what I've done is I've divided the water into the portions that I need. So when mixing a high hydration dough, a tip is to create a good gluten structure with your mix is always start off at 60% and then build up from there. Once you've got your pumpkin formed and you can see a good gluten structure, then you add water slowly and you drip it in there. A little bit at a time, which you'll see me do, and then you obviously add your salt towards the end, and then once the dough's ready, we'll pull it out. So what I'm going to do is I'll melt the yeast into a little bit of the water. So what I've done, so I've got it in my little Pyrex here. So melting the yeast. So I've split it up into, this has got 100 ml in there because the Pyrex is only for 500 mils. If you overfill it and you try to melt the yeast in it, then you're just spilling it over the edges when you put your hands in there. So that's why I divide it like this. So we've got, there you go, the yeast, the 1 gram's melted in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the net. We're going to start it at a speed of about 4. So that's on 4. And we're going to start adding the water. We'll just pour it in. So this is the one without the yeast. So I'll start with this one first. And just pour it in slowly. You can pour it in all at once, it's up to you. I just like to change the positions as well where I pour it, so it's not all in one spot. There's no right or wrong here. So that's 500 mils of water in there. And now I'm adding the 100 mils, so that brings it to 600. That's the one with yeast in it. There you go, so that's all in there as well. Okay, and we'll just watch it mix. So in the meantime, I've prepared another 100 mils of water. This is what's going to bring us to the 70% hydration, and we'll start with that shortly. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing a high hydration or a low hydration, like a 55, 56, 57%. The techniques, well, I believe the technique is always the same. When you're mixing your doughs, you put in the bulk of your water. If you're doing like a 57% hydration, you just save a little bit of water, because when you add your salt, then you want to put in a little bit of that water just to help melt that salt, so then it can incorporate better. Because if you chuck it in there and you don't add a little bit of water to help melt that salt, you're going to run the risk of the salt particles not distributing evenly or not melting properly. So that's the technique that I think is the correct way to do it, regardless of whether it's higher hydration or lower. So you can start to see that pumpkin's already formed, but it hasn't gathered around all that flour that is still scattered around the edges. So it's going to take a little while. So we're just going to let it mix. And again, there's no rush. This is part of that process to build a good gluten structure. So if you want to clean some of the other dishes while it's mixing, go for it. I find it nice and relaxing to watch the mix and see how it gathers everything and it builds the gluten structure. But yeah, the mixer itself, yeah, like I said, I've had it for 7-8 months now, and it's working amazing every time. It's not giving me any glitches or any problems at all. It's pretty straightforward. So touch wood, it keeps this up. But yeah, no, I love using it. You know, when I first got it, I thought, yeah, I'll eventually maybe one day buy a better quality one, or one of the better brands, I should say. When we say quality, really, it's nor here nor there. You don't really know what's quality at the end of the day. If it lasts and it does the job, that's quality, I guess. And I've got to be honest with you, now that I've got this machine, I've not ever once thought that I need a better brand one. It's doing the job fantastic. So, you know, if it performs and it keeps working as well as it is, I won't have to go allay a massive amount of money to go buy a more expensive brand. And like I think I may have mentioned in the other video, to get for example, a FMAG here in Australia, you're looking at, or for a variable speed one, the last time I checked was about $2,400, I think, which is a lot of money when you consider that this one here shipped from China to my door was $820. So it's a massive saving. Is it better than a FMAG? I can't tell you because I've never used one. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. But it's doing the job. And as you can see from the videos that I'm making, you'll be able to, I guess, get an idea. I wouldn't say judge, because unless you use it yourself, you're not really ever going to know. But it's going to give you an idea of what to expect from it. And I do have a KitchenAid, the Pro Series, And yeah, look, you can't even compare the two. I mean, the KitchenAid is an amazing mixer, and it's great for what it does. But when it comes to pizza doughs, yes, it does a good job with the pizza doughs, the KitchenAid, but you can't compare it to a spiral mixer. You can tell the difference in the dough when you're mixing the two, or when you've mixed the two and what the final product is. So as you can see now, it's started to pretty much gather most of that flour around the edges. Just got a little bit of the stuck on. So what we'll do is we'll get it to start smoothing out a little bit more, and then what we'll do is we'll start adding a little bit more water and the salt. And when you do add the salt, and I guess most of you that have used the spiral mixer will know this, is once you add the salt, it actually changes the texture of the dough, so that you can actually see the salt starting to strengthen the gluten in your dough itself. So you tend to get that, or you see more of that elasticity and ability to absorb water come into play with the dough. And it's more noticeable as well if you're pushing your dough to like a higher hydration, 75-80%, where yeah, that salt definitely transforms the dough. So I guess adding that salt comes into play depending on whether you're doing a 60, 70, 75 or 80% hydration as to when the correct time to add it is. But yeah, once you get your own spiral mixer, you'll see what I mean. I don't think it's as noticeable when you use the KitchenAid, but you do definitely notice how it changes the dough when you add it in the spiral mixer. I'll try and point it out when I dump it in there, see if you guys can see it in the video. But yeah, as more water goes in there, especially with the higher hydration, it's when it tends to transform from what it looks like now to that more consistency of a mozzarella or ice cream. So you can see the dough is smoothing out now. And because we're at low speed, it's not heating the dough. Actually, if you wait a minute, I'll get my thermal gun and let's see what the temperature is. So the water is straight out of the tap, so nothing's refrigerated. The flour is stored in my pantry under the stairs, so that's probably sitting around 18 degrees. So let's have a look at what the dough is measuring at. So 24.5. There you go. So that's the temperature that it's currently sitting at. So I've just measured the water. The water is sitting at 22 degrees. It is March in Australia, so it's still summer, or we're coming to the end of the summer. So the tap water is relatively warm. So I'll test it again as it goes, and then we'll see the temperature. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dump the salt in, because we're not going to crazy hydrations. There's no problem with adding it now. And then we just add a bit of water just to help that salt melt. So it just absorbs a little bit better. And as the salt gets absorbed in the dough, see if you can see a transformation on how the dough becomes a little bit more elastic, because that salt definitely does help that gluten structure develop, and it does it pretty quick as the salt goes into the dough. So the combination of these three flours as well is pretty good, and it actually does absorb quite a bit of water. So with the red bag, which is the pulcinella, that's a weaker flour. If you use that by itself, it does not absorb that much water, so you're really pushing it already at 70% hydration. Whereas the Costa d'Amalfi is able to absorb a lot more water, and the Tipo Uno as well. I've not tested it using 100% of it, but I do notice that when I do use it and mix it into my flours, it does help the absorption of water a little bit. And you don't have to use the Tipo Uno. It's just a personal preference. Don't think that it's a must, or it's just a personal preference. It's just a taste thing. I like the taste of it in my mix. And I guess that makes it a little bit healthier. So I guess it's like using or eating wholemeal bread, I guess. But we're not putting in that much. It's only 100 grams. Does it change the final result? A little bit, not enough where you're going to notice it at the end of the day. So don't stress. For what I'm doing here, you could stick to using just the pulcinella, for example, or the Caputo Blue, which is the equivalent when I use Caputo. The reason I like to use the Molini Pisotti is I personally like the taste of it. I find with the Caputo is not as consistent. It varies a lot, so I'm not sure if it's a supplier thing from where they get their grains. I find I get different results depending on what time of the year I get the flour, whereas this one tends to be consistent all year round. So what we'll do is we're going to increase the speed as well. So we'll go, this is 6 on the mixer. I think I mentioned last time that I don't usually go above the 6, I don't really need to. If you want to, you can, but keep in mind that higher speed means you heat up your dough, so you really need to do this quickly. So we've gone up a tiny little bit. I think it was 24.2 when we checked it before, so it's gone up nearly 1 degree in about 5 minutes we'll be mixing. Because we are doing a bulk fermentation, you don't want to heat your dough up too much, because when you heat up the dough too much, what it does is basically it activates that yeast and it starts doing its job, and the warmer everything is, obviously the crazier it goes. So we need to try and keep that temperature below a certain point. Obviously we don't want to exceed it and go up above your 28 degrees. because that then becomes too hot. If it does, what I recommend you do is you immediately put it in the fridge for about half an hour, just to bring that temperature down, just to slow everything down, and then you can continue your room temperature fermentation. So you can work around those things. Obviously try and avoid it if you can. So you can see the dough's starting to unstick like we saw in my first video. So we just pour in a little bit of water. And this is going to be very quick because we're only going to 70% hydration. So you can see once we've added the salt, I guess that's sort of mozzarella or ice cream-like texture to it, and that's what the salt does. So it gives it more elasticity. So it's what helps build up gluten net, or whatever the correct term is. So I don't like to add it towards the end because I find it that adding it a little bit sooner just gives it time to amalgamate the salt into all the dough. There you go. And as it starts to absorb it, then we'll just add a little bit more water. But as you can see, the mixer's working just as good as the day I got it, or when you last saw it. But yeah, no, it's great. I at this stage, I can definitely recommend this mixer if it's something that you're considering. It's consistent. Once you learn the right techniques, like I said, start off at 60% and then slowly add your water. And your dough comes together nicely. It's beautiful. But it's just like anything. Even the KitchenAid, I had to learn the techniques on how to get the dough to turn out correctly on that, because at the beginning, even though you're following what other videos show you, you're not getting the same results. The dough's not coming together, or it sticks onto everything, or it doesn't ball up. So you learn your techniques. So it's a lot simpler, obviously, using this. But yeah, it's just knowing a base to start from. And you can see, look at that, smoothing out. And then you add more water. And you can see that this dough is going to be only 70%. We're almost there. I've got about 30 mils of water left here. But you can see that this could easily go 75, 80%. But we're not going to push it today because I want to do this bulk fermentation at 70%. And this table that I got, I guess it's a free plug. I got it from Vevo online. I hope it's stainless steel. I think it is anyway, but it was like $130. It is a little bit wobbly because obviously the mixer is moving on it and it's not going to be 100% stable. But it's sturdy enough to support the 30 odd kilo mixer, and it's on wheels, so you can push it around. You know, if you keep it in the pantry and bring it out where you need it. It's actually a pretty good table. And because being stainless steel, it's easy to wipe flour or water or as it splashes off it quite nicely. And it's got the storage down below where you can put if you're buying your flour in bulk, like I do, in 10 kilo bags, it's just easy to put it underneath there and you bring it out when you bring out your mixer. So there you go, see how it's gathering it up nicely. We pour more water in there. We're nearly there. We've got another 10-15 mils, and see, there's a little bit of splash of water there as it moves around. Yeah, there's another splash over there. So with a sponge later, it's just easy to wipe everything off this table. And I've had it for almost just as long as I've had the mixer. And it hasn't rusted, so I guess it's decent enough material. for what it cost. You can certainly get a lot more expensive ones in the close to $1,000, which are your more professional grade stainless steel tables, but for home you don't need that unless you're going to set up, say, in a room or in your kitchen like a professional outfit, or in your garage. I wouldn't bother. Something like this is suitable enough. You're only doing it for home purposes. So we're almost there. I'm going to put the last of the water, because we're not pushing it to extreme hydrations. You don't really have to worry about dripping it to the micromilliliter in case you break the dough apart. As you can see, it's staying together nicely. And it's quite a powerful mixer as well. You know, considering that I'm at 6 right now, and which I don't think you need to go any higher. But you know, we've got, I guess, plenty of gas in the bag if we need to go faster. Test the temperature. Let's go. Let's have a look at what we've got here. It's probably risen a little bit. There you go. See how quickly it's risen because we're mixing at a higher speed. Oh, actually, no, hold on. There you go. 27.5. Oh, no, 29.7. Am I hitting... No, 27.8. Maybe my laser gun's out. Oh, that's weird. So the dough's warming up in areas, and 28.3, so starting to warm up in different spots. And it's not sticking at all, but it's getting close to that 30 degrees. There you go, 30 degrees. So the dough for me is pretty much ready now. It doesn't need to mix anymore, so what we'll do is we're going to slow that completely down and turn it off. So I'm just going to let it relax a bit, and then we'll check the gluten strength. We'll do the window pane test if you want, and we'll test that out. When you're doing your higher hydration doughs, it's up to you whether you want to oil your hands to touch the dough. Personally, I don't like to introduce fats into the dough if you haven't used any to begin with. I know some people like to, use it when they ball it up to minimize the sticking to your hands. Again, because your hands are warm, they will attract that dough, and inevitably it's going to stick if it's got a little bit more hydration than normal. I would personally rather you use flour to help minimize the sticking than using oil if you haven't introduced any in there. Reason being is when you're cooking at 450 degrees in a pizza oven, if you're using a proper pizza oven, not the home oven, the oil is going to be that catalyst that will burn your dough quicker. So, and that's the reason why oil is normally introduced in to a pizza dough. If you're cooking it in the home oven, it's going to help you. It's not so much for flavoring, it's more to do with the helping you get that golden brown texture, because especially if you're using 00 or 0 flours, as you know, that ain't brown in a home oven. So your oils or fats is what helps that process. So yeah, we want to eliminate it. So you probably saw me in my last video. What I do is I wet my hands to handle the dough to minimize the sticking. You're not going to alter the hydration enough when you're doing that. So okay, let's check the temperature. So 27.5. This is a cheap what do you call it, thermometer gun I don't even know if it's actually accurate or not. I don't even use it that much for my pizza oven. I roughly know when the temperature is ready for it. So there you go. So it's about 28, which is what I said you want to sort of stick to. So what I do is I wet my hands, and then, as you can see, a little bit wet, my fingertips. And then I just, if you want to move your dough down a little bit off your hook, just to get it ready to be pulled out of the mixer. But it's not overly hydrated. It's actually not even, you can tell it's not that sticky. Well, let's have a look. So you can see that window pane. So it's got a good gluten structure there. So we'll give it another minute and we'll pull it out. And again, have a look. See how easily it comes off the bowl, like it did last time. And yeah, the dough does feel a little bit warm, so it has warmed it up a little bit. But again, it is a warm day today. And yeah, the water, like I showed you, was already at 22 degrees. But if you want to minimize the heating up, you can use cold water out of the fridge, and that will minimize that process. So what we'll do is let's pull it out. So what we'll do is we'll pinch it. So it's actually quite strong because it's not as high hydration as normal. You can actually feel it's very elastic. When you've got a lot more water, it's easier to break it and pull it. But it's actually, now that I've got less water on my hands, it's actually still not sticking that much to the hands. So I've got no water left on my hands now, but it's actually pretty good. But what I'll do, there you go. So just get to grab the dough from the back part of the hook where you can't see it. Sometimes you just get a little bit stuck, but you can see for the most part it's pretty clean. You're always going to have a little bit of dough stuck somewhere, but it's actually mostly water from my hands there that you see. If it wasn't for the water, it'd actually be a lot cleaner. All right, so give me a sec. Okay, so here's the dough out of the mixer. So when you dump it on the table, try and not dump it on top of it, but like sort of right next to the dough. You want to try and minimize, I'm not sure what the right word is in Italian they say incordare, which is basically where it's knotting up the dough together, because you don't want to create a situation where your dough when you go to stretch it, where it becomes elastic, which is another thing that I find it in the mixer. You'll see some videos where people will let it rest for a minute and then, or say 10 minutes, and then they'll let it do like a slow spin of the dough, just where it pulls it off the bowl. I find that when I do that with my dough, it adds that additional strength to the dough balls, that when you do stretch it, it's very elastic and it stretches back, and it's very hard to get it to stretch where you want it. So I'm not sure if it's something that I do wrong, but you know, when you dump the dough on top of each other, you can get that effect as well. So the way I like to strengthen it, because it's pretty stressed out as it is from the constant mixing in the mixer. So what I like to do is, I mean, if we're balling it right now, you know, I'll give it 1 or 2 folds to strengthen it. That's how I like to strengthen it, because I find that it gives it enough of that strength or elasticity where when you do stretch your pizza balls, it goes where you want it, but it stays there. But when you lift it, it's not stretching in your hands to the point where it's just overstretching and then you get your holes in it. So that's why I do like to strengthen the dough by giving it folds, not by spinning it in the mixer after 10 minutes. So I'll wet my hands for this as well. So excuse me guys, I've had a bit of, I've actually had the flu, so excuse my voice if it's sort of fading in and out. So yeah, for folding it, what we do is I don't rest it for 10-15 minutes. We fold it immediately. So we just pull it up and then just fold it on itself. So you know, we give it a bit of a stretch and then try to ball it up a little bit. Now this dough, it's 70% hydration, but doesn't actually feel like it's 70%. So it could have easily absorbed a lot more water. So what we'll do is it's just a little bit warm, that's all, because it's heated up in the mixer, because it's been a warmer day today as well. There you go, so there you go, so we ball it up nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it one more fold, and then we're going to just put it in a container and we're going to let it bulk ferment. I might stick it in the fridge for about 40 minutes, an hour, just to bring that temperature down as well. So we're just going to cover it with the bowl, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes and we'll give it another fold once it's just had time to relax, and then we'll put it in the fridge for an hour and then bulk ferment at room temperature. Alright, so it's been about almost 15 minutes since we balled the dough, so I've had time to clean the mixer. So you can see inside, look at that, it's good as new. Again, keep it clean all the time, wash it out. Like I said, you know, you've got salt always in there when you're mixing. I rinse it out twice and then I dry it before I store it, so that way it gives time for all the moisture to dry up before it gets stored covered, so there's no moisture trapped in there, just in case it causes havoc with the mechanism or anything like that. Again, you want to do everything in your power to make sure that you're maintaining it, so give it no reason to malfunction. You just don't know what moisture can do to these machines. There's holes underneath there. I'm sure all the parts are greased and that, but you just never know. And again, there's the mixer again. So 7-8 months on, it's still going strong, and I'm loving the mixer. Keep in mind, having seen the temperature rise with it, we started off with 22 degree water temperature, which is quite high to begin with. Yes, I could have used water out of the fridge, but I didn't have any in the fridge today. And look, yeah, I got up to 28 degrees. Like I said, I'll put it in the fridge just to bring it down a little bit in temperature, but we'll see what happens. You'll see the progress when we come back and check up on it in 24 hours when we go ball it again, or 18 hours when we go to ball it for that 24-26 hour room temperature proofing, and then we'll see what the result is when we do cook it. So there you go. So there's the mixer. So if you do or are considering to buy this, I do recommend it. It is not a professional mixer by any means, so I wouldn't recommend you comparing it if you've seen professional ones on the internet. So you look, the temperature is going to rise because it's a small bowl. It's going to create friction in there. It might not necessarily be because of the mechanism. I don't think that's causing the heating up because it's not warm. I think it's mostly the friction as the dough is moving around, but you've got the hook spinning on it, the bowl spinning, then you've got the breaker bar. So there's many points of contact. And you know, if you look at my KitchenAid, it heats up even quicker than this. I'll show you the KitchenAid that I'm referring to that I have. This is the KitchenAid. So you can see it. I can't even remember what the model is, but it's the one with the handle on the side where you can bring the bowl down and up. It's one of those. So yeah. So the dough heats up on that even faster. So yeah, you want to make sure you're using cooler water. Had we used cooler temperature water, it wouldn't have risen above, I reckon, that 22 degrees, 24 degrees. And we could have probably mixed it a little bit longer. But it's something, again, you're going to work out as you go along. I didn't bother today, as it's not going to make a massive difference, like I said, to what I'm doing today. And if it does, then obviously I'll adjust it. So there you go. So we'll move over to the dough. We'll give it one more fold. So you can see it hasn't relaxed too much, like as if like a dough that would have had a lot more water. If you are going to use a bit of flour to handle the dough, use the weaker of the two flours. I don't think you should introduce a higher protein content flour into it. So we're going to use the pulcinella. Just put a bit of flour and give it another fold. But you can see it's already pretty dry. Like for a 70% hydration dough, that certainly doesn't feel like it. So there you go. So what we'll do is I'll just cover it up for now, and I'll show you what I'll put it in for the bulk fermentation. Just give me a second. Okay, so this is what we're going to use to bulk ferment it. So it's the smaller of the pizza containers with the lid. So so this one here is the one that fits the 6 dough balls versus the other one that can fit 15. The reason why we're going to use this, it's only 1 kilo of flour, so it's not massive. So what we want to do is as it bulk ferments, it's going to relax, but we want it to be maintained so that way when it does ferment, it ferments up, not by stretching and constantly just spreading everywhere, because if we use the bigger container, that's what it will do. Ideally, we don't want it to ferment to the point where it overproofs. So what we'll do is hopefully we should get it to about here. Now this lid, what it does is it allows, so we don't want to sort of cover it where it's completely airtight or use Glad wrap or cling wrap, whatever you want to call it. We want a little bit of the gases to escape, so we want a little bit of that air transfer to occur while still maintaining minimal air in there, so that way the dough doesn't create skin and it stays still moist. So that's what I'm going to dump it in now. So we're not going to add flour in here. I don't think we need to. So what we'll do is, and again, we're not going to oil it. It's not high hydration dough where it's going to stick to everything. With a spatula, you'll be able to just scrape off the edges and pull it out as you boil it. So you can see what it looks like in there. So this should hopefully relax. So you can see there's plenty of space. And yeah, we really want it to be sort of up to there if it's going to proof that much. But we'll check up on it in say 16 to 18 hours and see what the progress is like. I'm going to stick it in the fridge for about half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, just to bring that temperature down a little bit. So that way the yeast doesn't have a party and overproof it too fast. All right, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, so it's been about 23 hours since we've made the mass with the pizza dough. So let's have a look at what the progress has been. So you can see that it has risen quite a lot. There you go, look at that. So yeah, it's been bulk fermenting at around 18 degrees for 23 hours. I know I said that it was going to be a 24-hour bulk fermentation. So it's just an hour before. So we're going to boil it now, and then we're going to let it rise for another 6 hours, 7 hours before we're going to use it. So what we'll do is we'll put it down on the counter, and we'll make dough balls that are approximately, let's say, between 280 and 290 grams. So yeah, let's go through that now. So what I'll do is I'll dump some flour on the counter. Alright, so let's do this. So when we take it out, we're going to try and keep it with the same side up. So it's really airy, and you can feel that. So what we'll do is we'll use the same container. We'll flour it a little bit. Not that it needs it because it's not sticking too much. But yeah, you can see it's I would say probably more than just double in size. So we'll get our scale out and we'll ball it. Let's have a look. I'm not quite sure exactly what taste of the flour. We'll just put it on top. There you go. So yeah, about 280, 290 grams per ball. So yep, room temperature. We're going to let them sit here for another 6 hours, 7 hours before we use them, and let's come back to them and see what they look like once it's done. All right, it's been about 2.5 hours since we've boiled the pizza dough. So let's just have a look at the progress. So you can see that they've not quite doubled in size, but they're almost there. So they should be pretty much ready, I reckon, in the next 2 hours. Let's come back and check up on them again. All right then, so we're pretty much set up and ready to go with the pizza dough. It's about 7 hours since I boiled the pizza dough. So as you can see, they're pretty much ready to go. They're looking nice and puffy. So if you just bear with me for a second, just got a few more things to do to prepare, and we'll get that stretching and see what it looks like cooked.
You know, eat 2 pizzas. And say you can't eat all of them.